You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker Podcast.
Welcome back to the Storm Tracker Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marcus Benjamin here with my guy Frank Tucker, representing the Crib, South Florida. And it's at the Crib with my guy, where we talk recruiting, Canes football, and anything regarding Miami Hurricanes athletics. Of course, we're representing canescounty.com. Make sure you subscribe to the website for free. Use the promo code Miami30. Also, subscribe, like, and share this YouTube channel live from Canes County. And we are 2 weeks into fall camp here. Recruiting is going to go through kind of a lull here, but we've got some big recruits going to make their decision this week, Frank. Probably one of the biggest in the country, literally and figuratively, is Colin Simmons, the 5-star out of Duncanville, Texas, will make his decision today. And Miami, Texas, and LSU are the three contenders here. And we've heard a lot of talk of Miami being third in this race. And as of late, I would say the past couple of days, we've heard that, Miami has kind of jumped, closer to the top of this race for various reasons, and it'll be interesting how this all plays out. But you put out a kind of a post on our message board, Canes Talk, of what you thought of the situation. So just kind of expound on how you feel on Colin Simmons, whether he commits to Miami or not.
I think this is one of the most interesting final days for recruiting the cycle so far. It's been interesting since Simmons decided that he was going to visit Miami, because it kind of came out of nowhere, right? So there are, like you said, multiple factors here. The love for Jason Taylor is real. Him, his parents, they love the idea of him being coached up by Jason Taylor, his Hall of Fame resume. Just that mentorship that Jason Taylor has kind of brought to his recruitment has been vital in him being interested in Miami. Then the other side of it is the NIL opportunities, the marketing opportunities that come with being in Miami and being part of the Miami Hurricanes program. But with all that said, I don't think that he ends up at Miami. I don't feel confident enough to put a future cast in. I think that there's definitely a lot of interest, but I do think there's also a lot of interest in him staying home. I think the NIL opportunities at Texas are pretty much a match, washing that aspect of it. I think he's very close to that Texas coaching staff, and I do think that the SEC aspect of Texas now is making them even more intriguing. So I think it's a little bit of a troll job. I think he's pulling a little bit of a Charles Lester in that regard. And I think that he's kind of trying to run the money up a little bit. We've seen recruits do that from time to time. And I think that's kind of what's being done here. I know that there was a certain video that got leaked for a few minutes. I wouldn't put that as too much of a factor on him coming to Miami. Because if he was going to commit to Miami, I don't think anything would be real sloppy. We haven't seen any real sloppy commitments from any of our kids, and I don't think that the number one player in the class is doing anything but being strategic. And so I would love to see him at Miami. I think Miami has made late runs at guys in this cycle that we've seen, Elias Rudolph being one of them. And I think that Miami's doing the same thing here with Colin Simmons.
It certainly is a interesting recruitment, I would say, but you never know. It could be a Miami miracle or a Mario miracle, I should say. Mario has a way of closing. Of kind of closing deal here, and I think it's still a possibility for Miami to to make this happen. From what I understand, real estate is involved, or the big city aspect is involved in his recruitment. I learned of this maybe about a week ago that Miami had a legit chance to land this guy, and if they do, great, because the second he'd be the second 5-star to the class, and could potentially, maybe even add more to the class. Pairing him with a Marquise Lightfoot would be outstanding. And even if he does, commit to Texas or LSU, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Miami can flip him later on, depending on how great this season is for Miami. I think that's a big key for recruiting in this 2024 class. Just how great can they look on the field? Rivals what we released what's called the comprehensive rankings this week, which I thought was really interesting, which kind of takes into account the recruiting aspect and the transfers. And I think Miami Miami was 9th in those rankings, 9th, which also means that they were first in the ACC. Which basically means, I know I'm just going to be crazy to put this out there, is that they could potentially win this ACC with this roster if they potentially stay healthy, which sounds kind of crazy, and people are going to call me a homer for it. But I'm more of a numbers guy. I like to look at numbers and metrics and whatnot, and I would say a lot of times they're on point. Sometimes they're not, of course, but I think people are underestimating this Miami team this season, and for good reason. They were 5-7 last season, and I think they have a potential to win, way more than the 7 games that Vegas thinks that they're going to kind of teeter around. But based on these transfers, these freshmen, which we'll get into, that are competing at a very high level, I think there's a chance. And I do think there's a chance, maybe, just maybe, that he, commits, Colin Simmons does, to Miami. Another player that Miami is in contention for this week is Assandray Alfua. Now, this guy is, from the West Coast, so Cristobal has those ties over there that continue to work its way over here to the East Coast. Frank, just what do you think about Miami's chances of landing Aufua?
Yeah, the American Samoa aspect is definitely going to play a part here. There's a large conglomerate of American Samoa representatives in this program, and we've seen it play a factor with guys like Francis Mauanoa and his brother, guys like Frankie Tinalau. It feels like home for those guys on the other side of the country. You got Joe Salavea on the staff, who has that tie to the American Samoa community. I think that's going to play a factor. I also think, again, NIL and marketing opportunities are going to play a factor here as well. And then the fact that Mario Cristobal is a hands-on head coach with the offensive line. Kids love that. Now, this is a Texas A&M and Miami battle. I know Utah is in the top 3. I don't think they got a shot, despite at one point them probably being the favorite. I think they're the West Coast representative, but I think this is going to come down to Texas A&M and Miami. I'd probably be leaning a little bit closer to Texas A&M right now, but I would not count Miami out with him. I actually feel like Miami has more of a shot with Isendre than they do with Colin Simmons. I like the fact that it's a 2-team battle, and just kind of like how you said, Miami could flip Colin Simmons down the line. I would not be surprised to see a potential flip, even if he did commit to Texas A&M with Assandray, because Miami does play Texas A&M early on in the year. You get that win over them. That's a good look. If Jimbo Fisher doesn't make it through the year alive, that's another way that Miami still stays in the race. So I love where Miami's at in this recruitment. I love the fact that there's not as much West Coast representation in his top schools, and that shows me that he's willing to make the move.
We've seen Cristobal have success on the West Coast before, bringing in a Jaden Wayne, Riley Williams, albeit that was by way of IMG. Those were guys originally on the West Coast.
Came to the East Coast because of Miami, right? They wanted to be coached for the program. That's how much of an impact they got on those West Coast guys.
Yeah, and they got some more guys too coming down the pipeline. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see more in the 2025 class. Another player that I kind of wanted to talk to, local guy, Zaquon Patterson, 5-star out of Chaminade, Madonna. Of course, Miami already has one 5-star from the local powerhouse in JoJo Trader. There's been a lot of talk about a lot of these Chaminade players committing before the season starts, and the season's about to start next week, Frank. They're about to start a kickoff classic with Miami Northwestern, perennial school, of course, down here. So from what I hear from the Northwestern coach at Media Day, they're going to treat it like a real game. And I'm pretty sure Chaminade is going to treat maybe all of the game as a real game as well. So time's ticking on Zaquon Patterson. Do you expect him to make a decision before this season starts? Because that means it would happen within the week. It's already Thursday, and next Thursday, it's game on. So what do you think?
Yeah, I do not expect a commitment before that Northwestern kickoff classic. I don't think there's a rush for Zaquon in his camp. It's one of those situations where he hasn't taken a single official visit yet. He has visited all the schools that are still in his top consideration. But at the same time, if a conversation is had with any of those top schools and everything that he's looking for from a development standpoint, an opportunity standpoint, and so on, is met, I wouldn't be surprised to see a commitment, given at some point. But I just don't think we're going to see a commitment in the next week or so. I know fans, every time there's a bat signal, are wondering if it's Zaquon. But overall, this is still, for me, a heavy Michigan-Miami race with Florida State, kind of brewing. And there were some dominoes that kind of fell at the safety position. Peyton Woodard, just flipped his commitment from Georgia to Alabama. We just saw Red Morgan flip his recruitment from FSU to Alabama. It means Ohio State, in a way, got left out to dry with KJ Bolden going to Florida State. It means that Georgia now only has one safety in their class, and DeMello Jones. That means that Michigan is kind of left out to dry with really nobody in the class. It's one of those situations where there are a lot of suitors out there just because there's not a lot of safety talent. So I don't feel like he has to rush his decision. It's going to come when things are really the perfect time for him to make a decision. There were rumors out there that he did want to wait all the way until December with his decision, but I do not think that happens. But I just don't want fans to start thinking that something's coming in the next week or so, because I seriously doubt that.
Well, we'll continue to be on Zaquon Patterson watch within the next week or within this month at least. We'll see what happens. And
I'm going to keep my future cast with Miami. I know I mentioned all these other schools. I still think that Miami is the spot, and that's not just a homer prediction. Miami has done a really good job of making it known that he is a top priority, maybe the number one prospect on the board for them as a need. If you look at the safety position, Miami doesn't have a lot. If James Williams has one of those years that we expect James Williams to have, and Cam Kinchins does what Cam Kinchins does, we're going to lose both guys to the NFL draft next year. And that's going to open up opportunities for whoever wants to play opposite Markeith Williams at the University of Miami, because Caleb Spencer is more of a guy who's going to play in the box. How James Williams is going to be used this year is probably how Caleb Spencer is going to be used. I don't like. We're talking about Jaden Harris making that a little bit of a transition to safety. Jadias Richard is looking good at corner. Is he going to have to play safety? I don't think that Miami wants to put guys at that spot that don't necessarily play that position. So Zaquon Patterson can come in and play early at Miami. I think him and his camp see that opportunity. But we're just going to have to see. Michigan could make things really interesting. Florida State is making things interesting because Edwin Joseph is potentially starting as a freshman at Florida State. That
I
he's
didn't
a
realize
close friend. Yeah, he's getting first team reps at cornerback and
wow.
balling out. Yeah, like making highlight plays. So unfortunately, when you have one of your best friends at another school, that's going to play a factor in how you feel about a situation. And also, Conrad Hussey was a 7-on-7 teammate and a longtime friend, and he is also balling at the safety spot for Florida State. So it's going to be interesting. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is where we're kind of looking to the future here. But I think if that happens, where James Williams and Cam Kinchens go on to the NFL, I think Miami taps into the transfer portal, to be honest. I think they'll have to, find a safety somewhere in the transfer portal or the JUCO ranks. They've had some success there to kind of bring in guys. Demetrius Freeney obviously came in for this season. Got a little banged up from what we heard from Cristobal, but I think that's kind of probably where they go if, they don't get a Zaquan or any other blue chip safety. And Isaiah Thomas, let's not forget about him. He's the guy that's already in the recruiting class, 4-star kid. So I think he has a potential to have a big year in 2023.
But he does consider himself a star backer. That money backer type role. He puts it in his bio on Instagram and Twitter. I think he sees himself as more like a big safety, like a James Williams. And obviously we know James Williams' role is changing a little bit this year. So he's another guy I think that fits in that Caleb Spencer type position rather than like what Zaquan would play at the University of Miami.
Okay, so let's talk about these hometown guys here at camp because they've been making a lot of noise, Frank, and I'm not surprised. I know you're not either because we've been watching these kids for years and we've kind of know what they can do. And Mario Cristobal has been really impressed with the freshmen. He kind of raved about them at the presser yesterday, including, of course, Nathaniel Ray Joseph. This is a kid that is kind of helping to change the entire culture of not only the wide receiver room, but the entire team because his work ethic and just his relentless pursuit to be better is contagious. And Mario Cristobal, like I said, raved about him. And, he just thought that he is just can't be outworked is kind of what he is. I'm gonna play the clip right now of basically what he said at yesterday's presser. Just computer just kind of moves a little slow sometimes, but it's all good.
Ray's a great player, and the best part about him, he's just not going to be outworked. If you come out here at any time of day or night, he's probably on the jugs machine. He's really smart. He's really detailed. Whatever he does at 100 miles per hour. He's tough. He is just South Florida through and through is what he is. He's exactly what you want on your football team. If he makes a mistake or if he drops a football, he won't. He's going to find a way to come back and just make up for it. And so everyone trusts him. He's going to be a great player.
So there you have it. And now I just kind of want to ask you, Frank, with all these freshmen, because it definitely seems like he's going to be on the field at some point. Could it be game 1, game 3, game 5? With all these freshmen, we'll talk about what game do you expect to see them on the field? And we'll start with Ray Joseph. When do you expect to see him on the field?
Week 1. I think there's potential for him to start week 1. It's how, Rashard Smith. The last time we heard about Rashard Smith in a real glowing light was when he committed to the University of Miami. And I think he has potential to be a good player, but
he had a couple of plays, man. He
had a couple of plays, but he also had some game-losing drops. You know what I'm saying? So there's a trust factor there that I don't know is had with Rashard Smith that there might be with Ray Joseph. I think that Ray is a very special player. There's a reason that Miami puts such effort in getting him committed in that class early on, flipping him from Clemson, showing him the love that Manny Diaz just never did. He's been a priority since Mario Cristobal arrived. He was one of those building block players in that 2023 cycle that has become one of those building block players of the future of the offense. I think that his explosive ability, we saw him score a huge touchdown, granted against backups in the spring game. So the ability is there. And I think Rashard Smith, in a way, almost turned into like a possession slot receiver. He hasn't really had those massive plays that we've been hoping for. And there really hasn't been anybody that's been that game-changing threat out of the slot, because we know Xavier Restrepo is going to be that Braxton Berrios type player on a consistent basis, and he's going to be reliable, and you know what you're going to get from him. And we know on the outside, Colby Young has the potential to make big plays. But outside of that, it's really been limited on somebody who you could take your 50 at any moment. And I think Ray has potential to do that, and I think he has potential to do that in week 1. Because if you look at the early parts of the schedule, until you get to Texas A&M, it's potential blowout wins. Major opportunities for freshmen to get on the field. So I think Ray has major games each of the first few weeks leading up until that Texas A&M game.
So you're saying that we blow out Miami of Ohio? That's basically what you're
saying.
Blow
them out. Blow.
Okay.
If it was high school, like running the clock at some point,
Wow. I mean, we haven't seen that, though, Frank, in a while, where they are supposed to be a team like a Miami of Ohio and they blow them away. It just hasn't happened. I mean, I could bring back a myriad of games like Central Michigan,
App State,
Appalachian State, and games in which they lost where they were supposed to blow teams out, like Middle Tennessee State. So,
you got to bring that one up.
Yeah, I'm just not convinced that they are going to blow this team out. Could they win by 2 touchdowns? I kind of see that. I kind of see them winning by 2 touchdowns. It's game 1. You're in a game experience for the first time. A lot of newcomers, a lot of new guys on this line. That coaching staff is going to, they're doing their homework too. And if there's any game that I would say that is probably going to be closer than the experts think, it's probably game 1 against the Miami of Ohio, that I don't think the Hurricanes are going to overlook them, but there's potential for it to be close. And I just don't think it's going to be a blowout game. If a blowout game to you is like 4 touchdowns, I don't see it happening, but it could. It definitely could, and if it does, wow, the world is going to be on fire here in South Florida, and Shannon Dawson is and Cristobal and Guidry are going to be kind of royalty on thrones in Coral Gables. But we'll see how it all plays.
If this is a 28-14 game at the end, the flame underneath this coaching staff's butt is gonna be bad. It is gonna be bad, man. If they come out and they struggle against Miami of Ohio, like if this is like 14-7 at halftime or something like that, this will be such a bad look. You have way too much time. They have twice as many first-team all-conference selections by Pro Football Focus than either Clemson and FSU combined. And if you go out there, and listen, we've talked about it, right? How many guys have the potential to be first-round draft picks on this team?
I would say
you have several.
Potential? That's actually a really good question. Because I was actually talking about this with Manny Navarro of The Athletic, and we were kind of going down the line of which players he thinks are going to be first-round draft picks. And he only said that Francis Mauigoa is the only player that he believed would be a first-round draft pick.
I think
we're off our topics, but like, what do you think of that?
Get off topic. But like, Akeem Mesidor is the guy that could sneak into that first round as one of the better pass rushers in all of college football. Both Mauigoa brothers have first-round draft pick potential. Cam Kitchens, first-round draft pick potential.
See, his argument about Cam Kitchens was that he was a bit.
He's not going to kill the combine. But
yeah,
it's going to be strategic.
He's a little undersized as well.
At the safety position, you don't see him. Actually, he's not undersized at the NFL level at the safety position. College football, yes. But if you go look at the NFL, the range for safety height is more so 5'10" to 6'1" than it is to 6'2", 6'3". You don't see big safeties in the NFL. It's like Anthony Harris and guys like that, but a lot of those big safeties don't make it in the NFL for some reason. Cam Kitchens is for me, he's a first-round draft pick. But I mean, he's being mocked as a first-round draft pick by many of the NFL draft experts. I think that he's got potential. I think that Mesidor's got potential. Leonard Taylor's got potential. Nigel Kelly has potential. You go on and on. Damari Brown, when his time comes, has potential. Obviously, we got to see what he does on the college football field. Jadias Richard, as a freak of nature, he is a 6'2", 200-pound corner that runs a sub-11 time in the 100-meter. It's for me, there's way too much talent on this team and way too many guys that have early round draft pick potential. Colby Young is a guy that could be an early round draft pick. He's an absolute freak of nature. If he comes out this year and is the Tank Dell of this offense and has over 1,000 yards at 6'3", 6'4", over 200 pounds with the speed and athleticism that he has, the ball skills, the up-top ability, he could be a guy that sneaks into that first round. Quentin Johnston wasn't talked about anybody from TCU before last year. And then he came out, helped TCU become a really good team and snuck his way into the first round. Sure. I think the same thing could be said with Colby Young. Quentin Johnston didn't have a massive route tree. He was more of just a vertical threat receiver with some height and length and some solid speed. Colby Young fits that to a T. And I think that Miami has way too much talent to be competing with Miami of Ohio. Miami of Ohio, they're not even the main Miami. So for me, you start off this year with a bang, right? You have to, if Miami wants to get to the level that they are talking about getting to, Mario Cristobal is recruiting guys that are 6'4" and bigger, over 300 pounds, trying to put an SEC offensive line on the table. We just saw Lawrence Seymour leave the program because he just didn't feel like you could tell like the writing was on the wall just because of what Miami's looking for on the offensive line. It's like if guys like that or that are former top 150 recruits that are a little bit sawed off, don't have the opportunity to play in the trenches, that means that things are changing in Coral Gables. And I think that you're going to see changes in results. Manny Diaz tight games against App State aren't happening with Mario Cristobal, in my opinion, going forward.
We will see, said the blind man. But if you had to guarantee, let's just focus on the draft picks part. If you had to guarantee that players would be drafted in the first round, all those players that you named have great potential to be first round draft picks. But if you had to, you had to bet your house, your family on a player or more to be first round draft pick on this team, besides Francis Mauigoa, because he's potentially starting as a freshman, who would it be?
Cam Kinchens. Lock it.
You would lock that in.
Lock that in. And okay. I'm locking in Leonard Taylor. And I am locking in Leonard Taylor. Leonard Taylor has
to lock in Leonard Taylor. Okay.
Yes. If Leonard Taylor stays healthy, Leonard Taylor is a first-round pick. Every single draft expert has Leonard Taylor as a first-round pick. There's talk about him potentially moving into the top 10. The top 10 of the NFL draft.
Yeah, but you know how injuries happen. At one point, Tyler Van Dyke was a first-round pick. At one point, Zion Nelson was a first-round pick, and they are not at this point.
Zion Nelson has a degenerative knee issue, and Tyler Van Dyke was nitpicked because he only looks at one side of the field. Leonard Taylor is a disruptive defensive tackle, okay, who is transformed his body, looks like a freak of nature right now, and he has continuously shown flashes over the last 2 years of being an elite guy. And if we know anything about defensive line prospects, they don't gotta show it all the time, right? We just saw a guy get drafted 7th overall to the Oakland Raiders that couldn't make it happen at Texas A&M and only had 7 sacks at Texas Tech last year. So I think Leonard Taylor, with another year as one of the top 10 defensive tackles, grade-wise in college football, and 5 or more sacks, puts him in a position to be a potential top 10 pick. He is a 6'5", 6'6", almost 300-pound freak interior pass rusher that is exactly what the NFL looks for. He fits that Chris Jones for the Kansas City Chiefs role really well. Yeah, defensive tackles are going to take some plays off. Nobody's saying Leonard Taylor's a perfect prospect, but he is exactly what comes with being an elite 3-technique interior pass rusher.
I hear you about Leonard Taylor because the NFL loves them a defensive tackle, and it's one of those positions that are vital to winning games, especially on that level. So I could definitely see Leonard Taylor happening. We'll see about Cam Kinchens. We'll see about him. And, of course, I'm rooting for him. There's no kid. I mean, I'm rooting for all of these kids. But, there's one of the kids that I'm probably rooting for more than others is Cam Kinchens because he's a local kid, because he's a kid that, I've been interviewed several times while he was at Miami Northwestern. So definitely rooting for him to be a first-round draft pick. But let's get back to the freshmen that are kind of shining in camp, and another one of those kids is Damari Brown. And Demari Brown has shown that that he's here to make some noise, and Mario Cristobal had a few words about Demari. So Demari Brown, your opinion on him potentially starting, playing? What game could we see Demari Brown on the field?
Yeah, see his situation's a little bit tougher, right? Because if it's not a blowout with Miami, Ohio, there's not as much of a rotation at that corner spot as there is at receiver. So if it's not a blowout at Miami, Ohio, I don't think that he sees the field at Texas A&M if he's not on that in that starting lineup. It would be week 3 we'd probably see Damari Brown if it's not a blowout week 1 for me, unless he breaks through that starting lineup, which I don't see him doing because he wasn't an early enrollee. So for me, I'm just going to be a little bit on the safer side and say that we'll see him, more than maybe a couple of plays for the first time against Bethune-Cookman in the 3rd game.
Okay. That sounds pretty fair. We'll see how it all shakes out. That corner position is pretty much up for grabs, especially that second one. A lot of contenders here. Jadaeus Richard is in the mix as well as, of course, Daryl Porter and Demetrius Freeney potentially once he comes back as well has potential to.
So Corey Couch is on that outside now.
To Corey
like
Couch.
Jaden Davis could play some outside corner if they moved. Like if they have James in that more of a nickel role.
I think Davis is pretty much kind of locked into that star position. I could pretty much kind of bet the house that he's going to play there, but definitely Corey Couch is a guy who could stop maybe Damari from getting on the field if he plays extremely well. Another player, of course, is Ruben Bain, bro. Ruben Bain, Hurricane Bain, is making just all kinds of noise, wreaking havoc on the field, getting bigger, getting stronger, and just getting smarter, just learning more about just kind of being a defensive lineman on the college level. And of course, Mario Cristobal loves him as well. So here's what he had to say about Ruben Bain.
I don't think it's coming up, Marcus.
Oh, it didn't play? It's playing on my end.
Yeah, no, it's not playing.
We'll try it again.
But he knows that regardless of what happens, the ball. We got 28 of them out there.
Ruben Bain, the heritage guy,
complete monster. He is. The best thing for him is this puts it in perspective. He came in, he was banged up. He throws his body around when he plays football. He's a tremendous player, competitor. It's what you want at Miami all day. Ruben Bain's all day. Ruben Bain was benching about 250, 275, and weighing about 260. He's now weighing 280, 285, and he's benching 400 plus pounds. Explosive, fast, so smart. He's a one-time correction guy, right? If you correct it, he's on to the next player doing it the right way. He holds himself accountable. He's a natural leader. Just got a super bright future, but he also has a super bright present moment. He's going to be an impactful player for us this year.
Coach K. So there you have it, man. He's just, of course, singing the praises of Ruben Bain. When do you think he potentially sees the field?
Week 1, and he gets a sack. Week 1. What? Ruben Bain will be a starter by Texas A&M, in my opinion. I listen. Mario spoke about it. The guy went from benching 250 pounds to now he's getting over 400. Right now he was 260, 265. Now he's 280. So he can play a myriad of roles on that defensive line. He can play on the interior, and play on the edge. We saw what he did in the spring game, even against the starters. What do you have? 4 sacks, 3 or 4 sacks in the spring game.
Yeah.
He's going to dominate in practice. We know what Ruben Bain can do. Since Ruben Bain wore 58 at Miami Central, we knew that he was a special kid. It's just it's who Ruben Bain is. It's in his DNA. He came to Miami knowing that this was going to be his defensive line. You want to talk about another guy who could be a potential first-round draft pick, Ruben Bain. He's just a special player, in my opinion. And, yeah, week 1 is an easy expectation for Ruben Bain.
Yeah, really excited for him. I think what stands out to me from the coaches is that they say he is going to be an impact player. So that means a lot. No coach will say that about a freshman unless they mean it. So for them to for both Cristobal and Guidry said the same thing. DC said that he's going to be an impact player, and Jason Taylor as well has said the same thing, that he is going to be an impact player. I think we're going to see a lot of Ruben Bain this season, and he has potential to be one of the best to ever play defensive line at Miami because he's getting such a huge head start. I think the fact that he was here in the spring is obviously it's already paying dividends. You heard Mario Cristobal and what he said about, of what he came in and what he's now lifting. And that's just going to get even better and better throughout the season, next season, the following season. I mean, sky's the limit for Ruben Bain. And I think he could definitely be one of the all-time greats and definitely get on the field week 1. We got Canes Fest coming up on Saturday, so we'll be able to see some of these guys in action. I'm sure we'll see a ton of these freshmen out there. One more freshman I do want to kind of throw out there, not from South Florida, but does have South Florida ties, is Malik Bryant, bro. I watched practice yesterday, and the kid is just really quick. He's really quick, and he's just a player that I could see, at least getting into the rotation if we see, maybe some injuries from some of the top guys. Maybe you could see him getting in the rotation in the Bethune-Cookman game as well. All of these linebackers, we've been hearing great things about. Every single one of them. Bobby, Popo, Malik Bryant, of course, and Marcellus Pulliam. Like, these guys have potential to be the next great linebacker group, and better than the Quarterman, McLeod, and Pinckney group. I'm talking maybe Michael Barrow, Jesse Armstead, and Darren Smith. You may be a little young to even know who those guys are.
I know.
but
but
those guys kind of really set the standard of the linebacker group, and I think because of that group, they were able to bring in a Ray Lewis shortly after that. So, yeah, I think this linebacker group can be special. But Malik Bryant, just throwing him out there, when do you think he probably sees the field?
I don't think he sees the field until Bethune. I think they're going to kind of string him along how they did Wesley last year, and maybe even a little bit tougher, honestly, because there are really only 2 linebackers playing at a time in this Miami defense. We know James Williams is going to be playing closer to the line of scrimmage, maybe not as a linebacker, but as that overhang type player mixed with the strong safety, right? And I don't know. There's so much talent in that linebacker room now. You bring in, Francisco Mawanoa, Kiko, right? Like,
yeah,
you got Wesley in there. We know
KJ
that.
Floyd.
You got KJ Cloyd, who is now with his linebackers coach from last year. Listen, I know nobody's a Corey Flagg fan. He's going to get on the fields a little bit. He's going to be part of the rotation. He's considered a leader on this defense. It's it's tough. There's not a lot of reps to be had at the linebacker position, and it's definitely one of those positions where you got to know what you're doing compared to just being out there and being a good athlete. Because if we were just talking about pure talent, Malik Bryant would probably be starting right now because of he's a freak. I mean, if you haven't seen the pictures of Malik Bryant and his body transformation just from the short time that he's gotten to Miami, I would advise you to go look at that so you can get excited for the future of the linebacker position at the University of Miami. He is going to be a really good player. There's also the aspect of this is that he hasn't really been a true off-ball linebacker in his high school career. It's because he was more of a pass rusher. So he's making a transition to being a traditional off-ball linebacker at the Mike or Will spot. And there's going to be a learning curve. And he was also a guy that really didn't play much despite being an early enrollee because of injury. So not only is he coming back from injury, he's trying to make a transition to another spot. And he's young at a position where there's a lot of talent right now. It's a really beautiful sight to see that the Miami linebacker core doesn't look like it has in the past few years. And we're seeing more guys that are like, I'm going to throw this out. This is a throwback. Rocky McIntosh, right? And Denzel Perryman's, right? That's the type of potential that I think these guys had. John Beeson's, right? Guys like that. I don't know about you're talking about like college football Hall of Famers. I'm gonna temper expectations to guys that were early round draft picks. That's where I'm gonna leave it at with them. But I like Malik Bryant. I don't think we see him until Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah, I agree. One more player I'll throw out there is Mark Fletcher, bro. Mark Fletcher is another outstanding freshman that's flashing in camp. And, when you look at the running back room, he's the biggest dude. He's already the biggest dude out there. And he's just stepped on campus, a few weeks ago. So, Mark Fletcher, when do you think he gets his first carry at Hard Rock or on the road,
Yeah, week one. So remember how Thad started off the year pretty hot last year? Yeah. So remember how Thad started off the year pretty hot last year? What did he have? He had a couple touchdowns, I think, in the first game, right? There was a power back role under Mario Cristobal, especially when they got close to the goal line, short yardage situations, things like that. There's really nobody else that fits that mold. They don't want to put Henry. He's not really a power back. He's more of a balanced one-cut guy. He's for me. Remember, he was a track star in high school. Don Chaney was a guy that had big playability, but he was never a guy that really loved running in between the tackles the same way Mark Fletcher does. I think when you look at a guy who they need when they need someone to be a plotter, just kind of put it into somebody, it'll be Mark Fletcher before it'll be anybody else. I don't think Henry Parrish can do that. They don't want to put him in that position, so he's not getting banged up. I don't think they want to bang Don Chaney up inside the tackles all the time. He's more of a stretch guy, one cut, like outside zone type player, right? Where he's just going to make a cut. He's going to try to break some tackles, but he's got that balanced profile that a lot of the guys on this roster don't have. I think A.J. Allen's more of a big play threat. You got your balance from Henry Parrish, who's got some receiving ability. I think Don Chaney's the guy that they think could be a two-down guy. But I think Mark Fletcher early on could have that Thad Franklin type role as a guy who weighs 230 pounds, and you can just kind of push him at the line of scrimmage, and he's getting you 3 yards in a cloud of dust very early on, even if he's not typically ready yet for that 3-down role or to be a starter. I see him scoring a touchdown against Miami of Ohio. I think he's going to have – well, I think if Ruben Bain gets a sack, I'm going Mark Fletcher. Listen, I've already gone out on a limb and saying that Mark Fletcher is going to end up being the starter as a freshman this season. So, for me, I think we see him very early. I think he makes a big-time impact in that first game. And I think that he makes some big plays in the second game against Texas A&M.
I'm willing to make a bet with you, Frank, on who scores Don Chaney or Mark Fletcher, and I'm going to go with Don Chaney. I think they are going to make Don Chaney, make them put in Mark Fletcher. Like they are going to put Don Chaney. They're going to give the ball to Don Chaney and say, "We're going to give the ball to you first. You've been here.
Absolutely.
You've been going through so much throughout your career here at Miami. We're going to give you the ball at the goal line. And if he struggles, or if he fumbles or something like that, then you kind of force their hand to put in a Mark Fletcher in. But I think they're going to, I guess, force Don Chaney to make them play Fletcher.
How about this? Let's change the bet up a little bit, right? Let's change the bet up a little bit. I bet in week 1, and we can do dinner. We'll do dinner. I bet Mark Fletcher gets more goal line carries in week 1 than Don Chaney.
Goal line carries. I'll take that. I'll take that bet. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like they're going to.
Are we just saying inside the 5? Are we gonna say just inside the 5? Who gets more carries inside the 5? That'll be considered our goal line or inside the 5 carries.
Yeah, we could do that inside the 5.
Oh man, I love it. I love it.
All right, so game 1, just game 1 here. So we'll see how it all plays out. That should be an interesting one. And I'm an expensive dinner day too, man. I'm more of a Ruth Chris, Morton Steakhouse or something like that. No Cheesecake Factory over here. But yeah, so that is pretty much kind of wrap it up. We went a little long than we expected, talking a little draft talk here. But that's going to wrap it up for the Storm Tracker podcast. It's Canes Fest this weekend. So fans, if you want to take a look at your Miami Hurricanes, you have an opportunity at Hard Rock Stadium, 9 a.m. It's going to be early. If you're trying to tailgate, you got to get there at like 7 at least. So it should be a fun day. It's an opportunity for fans to interact with the players, take pictures, sign autographs, that sort of thing. I'll be in the press box watching and providing updates on canescounty.com. Make sure you subscribe to the website to have access to our message board, Canes Talk, where I'll provide some inside information that I'm seeing from the box. That's going to wrap it up again for the Storm Tracker podcast. Until the next episode.